I do have a sponsor in this video, but more on that shortly. So today's video will be a discussion along with a bit of news on the ever so important topic of companions in Dragon Age the Veilguard. Now there's a few topics in this video where I think some people are going to have strong opinions on, so please do share your thoughts below, but try to do it in a respectful way to encourage some meaningful conversation. So the topic of companions is of course very important to a Dragon Age game because while BioWare's gameplay design philosophy can be a bit unpredictable and ever-changing, not necessarily always for the better, although that would be subjective, BioWare's companion designs have for the most part been a highlight of many of BioWare's games, especially the Dragon Age games. In fact, there's a ton of fans out there that almost don't even care what gameplay is like in a Dragon Age game. They just want to experience everything that comes with the companion system. So on a quick side note, I've seen a decent amount of comments, especially during the God mode setting conversation, where people are saying, why even play the game if you don't enjoy combat, or if you're going to play on the super easy mode? That's no challenge. You might as well just go watch Netflix. Well, last time I checked, you don't have any agency over interacting with other characters in a Netflix show. TV shows don't typically have multiple outcomes based on viewer choice, nor do you get to watch shows as your own self-made character. Now, over the course of BioWare's history, BioWare has created many deep, complex characters, and it's genuinely a joy for many players out there to interact with these companions, learn about their history, see how the reactivity plays out and changes according to decisions made by the player, mess with the romance arcs, approval ratings, switching up who you take with you to see what type of banter lines you're going to get, and the list just really goes on. And you can't do that with a TV show or a movie. So what I'm getting at is try to have some understanding towards the players out there who don't really care if certain gameplay aspects are streamlined. Some fans just place way more value on story and characters in these party-based RPGs, just like many of you may place more value on gameplay mechanics, combat, etc., or maybe even a mix of both. Now, I will say though that you can also flip this around, and those of you who mostly only care about companions and story in a Dragon Age game, try to have some understanding of, an RPG gameplay enthusiast perspective, where many of them may feel like BioWare is going a bit backwards in terms of a focus on having deep RPG gameplay systems and mechanics. I will briefly touch back on this in the final chapter marker of the video. But before we get too deep into it, I have partnered with Geology to bring you this sponsored video. Geology creates simple and effective skincare and hair routines that are customized just for you with ingredients that are proven to work and trusted by dermatologists. Prioritizing skincare will have you looking like your favorite RPG companions. Wolfheart, you don't look anything like the companions. Maybe I don't, but my skin sure as hell does. As you can see here, I've got my everyday face wash, morning moisturizing cream, night cream, and also eye cream for those dark circles that used to get darker with every passing year into my 30s, but no more. I'm now back into my 20s. Geology has 10,000 plus 5-star reviews and 30 prestigious awards, including nods from Men's Health and awards from Oprah Daily Grooming. My daily ritual is wake up, wash my face with the everyday face wash.
Refreshing.
Then it's morning moisturizing cream before a nice morning walk in the sun, as it does have SPF protection. Then before bed, I use the eye and the night cream. I've definitely noticed reduced oiliness, smoother and more hydrated skin, less darkness around the eyes. My skin just feels better. And hey, it's always good to get ahead of the wrinkle game. These products are also super easy to use and understand, with the routines being tailored to each individual. The commitment feels natural and easy. So what are you waiting for? Use my code WolfheartFPS and grab 70% off the skincare trial set. Remember, there's also that 50% off on add-ons waiting for you. Get that skincare under control with this great deal. Back to the video. So Dragon Age the Veilguard is of course placing a heavy emphasis on companions, so much so that they even renamed the game to represent a focus on you and the companions, as collectively you make up the Veilguard. In a recent article by none other than Wesley from Game Informer, link below, Wesley reports that Gary McKay, BioWare's general manager, said, "We really wanted to do something different, and we did push the envelope in a couple areas, companions being one of them. Once we got knee-deep in it, we realized we had something special with these companions, again, around the motivations, the story arc, and it really started to become the centerpiece for this game." Epler also said that one of BioWare's principles when creating the Veilguard was that the world exists even when you, Rook, are not around. There are things, ancient conflicts, grudges, and more that happen even when Rook isn't participating in them. So that, of course, ties back into the companions, as companions are meant to feel like real living people with you, not just characters that serve the purpose of aiding the main character. Dragon Age's game director, Corinne Bush, even added that these companions are the most fully realized, complex companions we've ever crafted. They're complicated, they have complicated problems, and that's what's interesting. Corinne then went on to basically say that in the previous Dragon Age games, you may feel like the companions are going on an adventure with you, while in the Veilguard, you may feel more so like you're going on a journey with them. Now, some people have taken some of BioWare's comments here as a bit of a slight on the previous Dragon Age writers, and I love the previous Dragon Age writers, but to be honest with you, it didn't really come across that way to me. I mean, imagine if BioWare was having a meeting and someone at the table was like, for this next Dragon Age game, let's really try to push the envelope with companions by making them more complex and making it feel like the player is going on a journey with them versus the other way around. I don't think anyone would have a problem with a writer saying that and trying to improve upon previous works from the same company. Perhaps Corinne and Epler could have maybe worded some things a little bit better, but overall that didn't come across that way to me. I can't know for sure, and if anything else comes out in the future that makes it feel like that, I will of course comment, but I think we're taking it a little bit too far. Now, with all that said, BioWare is of course going to talk a big game for their companions, and it's important to note that many of the writers here did not write for the previous Dragon Age games, so they are going to of course feel a sense of pride with their own creations and expansions on the lore, as all artists and writers should. But at the end of the day, it's really up to us, the players, the one who spend the money on the experience that's advertised to us, to ultimately decide how well written we feel and how well designed companions are. We still, of course, don't know a lot about this game, so we'll have to wait and see. But let's talk a little bit now about what we do know as of now about the companions, and then we'll get into some more interesting, highly debated topics such as companion sexuality. So Lace Harding is a dwarf who we first met in Dragon Age Inquisition as a side character, and she was the lead scout for the Inquisition, providing information to you, the player, the Inquisitor. I would say that Lace Harding was a pretty charming and optimistic character, which likely led to her popularity among fans, which has led to BioWare making her a full-blown companion for the Veilguard. Although she was an archer in Inquisition, for the Veilguard, Harding seems to be manifesting some magical powers, which is part of the mystery of her character right now, as dwarves cannot wield magic as they have no connection to the Fade. Davrin the Elf is likely going to be a new fan favorite here due to two reasons. Number one, he has a little young griffin companion named Asan, and two, he is a Grey Warden. Now, if you're like me, the Grey Wardens are one of, if not the coolest factions in Dragon Age lore, as Wardens are exceptional warriors who have quite literally dedicated their lives to fighting the Darkspawn throughout Thedas. You also play as a Grey Warden in Dragon Age Origins, the game that started it all, so I'm assuming that many players will be keeping Davrin around for his story. Now, Davrin is a warrior, and he's said to be bold and charming, but also that he doesn't take himself too seriously. Lucanis is a master assassin who's not only part of the Antivan Crows faction, but also heir to the Antivan First Talon position, which is a position of immense status and power in the organization. The Antivan Crows are a driving political force in Antiva, which is east of Tevinter, and they're often hired to assassinate nobility. Lucanis is said to be poised and pragmatic, but lacking in social skills, so that should make for some interesting dialogue and banter. BioWare even states that Lucanis is basically the hot mess of the group. Now, there is actually a short story about Lucanis and a few of the other companions in Tevinter Nights. I'll go over that, or possibly even narrate these stories sometime in the near future. Neve is a human ice mage and a cynic fighting for a better future, both as a private detective and a member of Tevinter's rebellious Shadow Dragons. The Shadow Dragons are a resistance group opposing corrupt rulers and slavery in Tevinter, especially in the capital city of Minrathous, where slaves are still quite common, and the ruling magicracy pretty much looks down upon everyone or anyone who's not a mage. Neve is said to be the voice of the streets and the voice of the common people, and genuinely a good-hearted character. Emmrich Valkyrin is a human necromancer of Navarra's Mournwatch faction, and he is a well-meaning scholar with a skeletal assistant named Manfred. The Mournwatch faction serve as elite guardians and keepers to the Grand Necropolis and its sacred repository of the dead. Now, the Grand Necropolis is a mausoleum that could almost be a city itself in terms of size, and it's a place for the bodies of all good souls destined to sit by the side of the Maker. Some BioWare devs have said that Emmrich is their Vincent Prince dad, so I'd say expect a serio-comic attitude type personality. Emmrich is also said to have quite the intimate romance. Bellara is an elven mage that is a veil jumper obsessed with uncovering the secrets of the Elfhenan, which is the ancient elven empire. She is said to be a creative, focused, and romantic character. Now, the Veil Jumper faction are a group of explorers of ancient elven ruins, and they work to contain the threat of magic, unraveling the Arlathan forest. Bellara has a powerful magical arm gauntlet that can manipulate the environment and also turn into a hunting bow. Many believe that Bellara will have a very personal stake in the main story, or Solas' story, as she is most impacted by Solas' plan to destroy the Veil. And the final companion revealed to us is Taash, of which we have the least information on as of right now. Taash is obviously a Qunari, but a Qunari dragon hunter allied with the Lords of Fortune faction. The Lords of Fortune are a renowned guild of treasure hunters and dungeoneers based in Ravane, a nation far to the east of Tevinter. We also know that Taash lives for adventure and doesn't mind taking risks. So 7 total companions that have been revealed to us. And yes, we did get to see Varric in the gameplay reveal, and Varric was a companion in Dragon Age Inquisition. But Varric appears to be more of a counselor rather than an actual companion. But actually, we really have no idea what may happen to him and how much of a role he has to play. But back to the recent Game Informer article, we learned that the companions in this game will be participating in both the dark aspects of this game's story, as well as the lighter, more optimistic aspects. But BioWare did tell us that even when it gets painful and quite dark, throughout the game there will be this sense of optimism which creates a delightful through line throughout the game. So it sounds like there's always going to be an undertone of hope, I guess you could say. And yeah, as a player, I think that's important, especially when you're in a group of companions, as it kind of ties everyone together despite, personal differences. Now, each companion will have their own story and quest, of course, and these stories are said to progress with or without your romance. Now, this is a common fear in companion-based RPGs, but BioWare has assured us that you will not be locked out of progressing a companion's stories if you deny their love. And speaking of romance, relationships will form outside of the player's control. So if you don't romance a certain character, there's a chance that they may get into a romance of their own with a different companion. Now, this occurring will be more than just witnessing a little side story, though, as companions that fall in love with each other may actually force the player character to make some tough decisions. Do expect sex and nudity in this game. We don't know how far they're going to take it, but expect that. And BioWare reiterates that this is a mature RPG, but of course there should be settings to turn off nudity and maybe even more. Now, all the companions have been revealed to be romanceable, and all of them are also pansexual, which is defined as, on WebMD, pansexuality is the romantic, emotional, and or sexual attraction to people regardless of their gender. I would say that this is different than a player sexual system, because in a player sexual romance system, at least in my mind, a companion isn't necessarily inherently, a specific sexual orientation, such as being pansexual. More so, the companions in a player sexual system will form according to what the player wants. I'm actually very interested in seeing some debates on this topic, because I think there's a lot of valid viewpoints from many different perspectives in terms of how a romance system should work. For example, pansexual allows players to romance any companion of their choosing, but it also fails to represent other sexual orientations through the companions. If every studio goes with pansexual from here on out, you'll never see a straight or gay character ever again as part of their actual story. Less players will be able to truly relate to specific companions, as most players statistically are not going to be pansexual IRL. Having the Dorian story arc from Inquisition, a story arc that I'm sure plenty of gay, especially men, were able to heavily relate to, well, that can't truly exist in its purest form if Dorian was pansexual. And that would also apply to a player sexual system. Now, a player sexual system can be great, as it allows players, like with the pansexual system, to romance any companion of their choosing. But the potential downside here is that some people will feel like companions are a bit shallow, because the player who is not a game writer is the one who is choosing a sexual orientation for a companion. It's no longer a part of that character's writing and history. And some people feel like sexual orientation is a very important part of a character, and player sexual kind of takes that away unless a writer is able to create a backstory for every single sexual orientation that a player could choose, and that of course is not going to happen. And then also we run into the problem of what is going to be canon. And then companions with different sexualities can be great, as the characters can feel very real. This is how it is IRL, of course, if you meet up with a group of people, and writers can create in-depth, complex stories that involve a companion's sexuality. And the potential problem here, though, is that the writers then have to make the decision as to how many sexual orientations need to be included in the game, what race and what genders are what sexual orientations, and even though you may not care at all about this, this of course will cause some controversy from both sides of the player base. You know, too many gay characters, too many straight characters. Why is the black man gay and the white woman straight? The list just goes on. An absolute headache for a game developer, which is why I think we are seeing more pansexual or player sexual systems these days. Let me know what you think in the comments below. In the final segment of this video, we'll briefly touch on companions' roles in combat and their progression. We do know that the party size in this game will be 3 total, so you'll only be able to take 2 companions with you out on quests and missions, although all of them should be chilling together at the game's central hub, which is the lighthouse. Now, the lighthouse will likely be the place where many romances take place, I'm assuming, and also it's going to be the place where you get a ton of dialogue with the companions in between missions. Bioware seems to really be pushing the idea that all of this with the companions is pretty deep and fleshed out, so we'll see how that turns out. But back to combat though, and even I guess exploration to a certain degree. To get some control over your companions and your party, you have to use the ability wheel. There's no more, you know, setting behaviors for your characters. It doesn't seem like that's a thing, and there's definitely no more taking control, full control of your companions like you could in the previous games. When you bring up the ability wheel in this game, the game will pause, and this is where you can see not only your 3 active abilities, but also your 2 companions' 3 active abilities. They each have 3. Now, this allows you to have some control over companions in combat using, you know, certain specific abilities and specific situations, but it also creates the opportunity for synergies and, of course, combos. When you're not paused in the ability wheel, however, we are told that companions will completely act on their own and pick their own targets. So yes, less control over companions than in the previous Dragon Age games, and also less active abilities. It's also important to note that companion progression is much more limited than your player character's progression. The companions will have their own progression trees, it sounds like, but these trees, or these, you know, whatever, this method for acquiring skills and stuff is going to be much smaller and more limited than what the player character gets for their class trees, etc., which I did do a video on that. I'll put a link down below. Now, each of the companions is said to only have 5 total abilities to choose from, and you can make 3 of those active at a time. This is obviously a bit of a bummer for many RPG gameplay enthusiasts, you know, losing some control over companions and their progression and abilities being, I would say, dumbed down from the previous Dragon Age games, but it is what it is. Companions will also have their own companion-specific armor, and I'm assuming weapons as well, although I could be wrong with the weapons. So basically, there's no denying here that the RPG aspects of, you know, the depth behind companion loot and armor, you know, combat and also class progression are sounding very streamlined, and this is where I see a bit of an understandable divide in players that are talking about this game. Now, RPG gameplay enthusiasts are probably not too happy about the streamlining nature of the game here, while more story-focused fans may like it or simply not really care at all. And yeah, that's basically it for this video. You know, combing back over the recent Gameplay Informer article, it really pushed the idea that companions are complex, and they represent not only just individual people, but also factions and entire areas and nations of Thedas. I know this video was kind of all over the place. We were talking about, you know, companion lore, and then we moved into discussions on romance systems and RPG debates and stuff like that. But hey, I just figured I'd put it all into one video because most of it did have to deal with companions. And yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. Looking forward to reading some of the comments below. Thank you to Geology for sponsoring this video. I appreciate that, and I'll catch you all on the next one.